Hi everyone, this is Rick. I wanted to talk a little bit about mask making for peroxide and light treatment on comic books. What is a mask and why do we use it? So, for example, this is a mask here for Hulk 181 book that I made. This is in plastic. It's a final mask for just the title part. There are other white parts for the Wendigo. I can make a better mask, but this one is just for the title section. But today we're talking about this copy of Batman 251, which someone sent to me, and they like it cleaned up and whitened up. Now, something to note in this book is that this area here, this 20 cent and this DC are yellow in the original book, and they're not to be whitened. So they might look dull here. These are not whitenable areas. The rest of it is in the middle of this card, and this one's actually pretty white, but there's much on the back of this book that needs it too. We'll make a back mask as well. A mask looks something like this. This is a practice mask. It's made from paper. And we are trying to remove the parts that are in white and leave the parts that are colored. This is the peroxide mask, which is a little different than the light mask. I'll show a light mask later. It has more detail and has shadow in areas we wouldn't be able to shade or want really necessarily need to shade for the peroxide. So this is the white mask, and it will fit over the front here. And the peroxide mask. And this is the mock-up of it. This one's from paper, but the final one will be cut from plastic. And the best one will leave the colored parts covered and the white parts exposed. We'll do the same, of course, like I said, with the back of this book as well. And it will help us to not expose the colored parts to light or peroxide. Now, is that a problem? That's a different video. I don't know that it's a problem. I fear it's a problem. I've heard stories it can be a problem. I think sometimes it's better if you can avoid it. So not always, of course. I don't do it for every book, but for books that I'm particularly interested in not having any color loss or embrittlement, I'll go ahead and make a mask like this. So it's probably not for you. I'm sure it's not necessary for every book and every person, but if it's something that you're interested in, this is the process by which I make the first mask, and I'll give you more tutorials on this later. So what's interesting to note when you scan a book like this in is that the whites are not white and the blacks are not black. So for example, if we were to scooch in on this ace here, you'll see that it's all sorts of different colors in here. And there's whites here, there's whites there. It is not really white really anywhere. I can take a big brush tool and kind of wipe some of this out, but you're doing this all day long. So if you want to select the whites, it can be very difficult. I mean, your other option is just to draw all the white surfaces out with the pen tool. I'm just sort of wiping these out here. But you have to then exclude all these other colors, right? You have to sort of get that in. And if there are any Photoshop experts out there, please help me figure out how to do this better. Here, look at this. This has a lot of, there's surprising colors inside these letters here that you can brush out. But there's white here. Look along that. And if you go up to, I think there's surprising colors in other weird places. I believe at the back of Batman's head here, there's actually red in this area here. I'll show you. Yeah, there was red. I can erase this. I started working on this one before. You can see that there was red here, and it's really not quite white, is it? There's red over there. So going around, you can either draw this with the pen tool. You can draw this out, or you can select it with the multiple select tool, and you can make all these paths, and that takes a while, right, to make this whole path all the way around. But I guess you have a few shortcuts here you can take. But it looks a little weird and boxy. So what I did was I just did select color range, and I would select color range of white, and I got to turn the fuzziness up a little bit. There, and then I would just select an area, and then I would go edit fill with white, a certain amount of area. I can just fill this with white. And I just sort of did that there. This looks a lot better, right? And then I slowly turned that up and filled it up more, and then I went back and defined a lot of these edges with the brush tool. Like I would make this brush here, and I have to deselect first. And that's sort of what I did. Made the whites white, made the blacks blacker, for example. So I had to go into here, and I had to basically take everything that was black and fill it in with black like that. And then that's what I did, and I made a work path out of it. So let's make a work path mean, and then I would export that to Illustrator. But let's say I wanted to make a path out of, I don't know, just Joker's face here, for example. Let me select the background layer first, and I would go to this tool, and I would let's just say that we're going to just select his face with the lasso tool here, very roughly. And I wanted to make a path from this. Well, then you just go to paths over here, and you go to this guy. Here you make a new path. And I would, I want to make a work path, sorry. This button here. And then you go change it to, I don't know, Joker. And then it makes this path here, which you can now adjust. You can now use the different tools to adjust. And when you have the pen tool selected, of course, where did I put the pen tool? Here, right back where I started. There it is. You can add a spot like this here, or you can hit Option, or and you can adjust these different spots that you make. So if you want to move one around, you can delete anchor point. That one. If you think there are too many, or you can add one like this, and then you can move them around and do a little scoochy scooch on Joker's face to make it fit better. Then what you can do is you can export that path to Illustrator. So once you have a path here, you can go File, Export. Let's see here. Where did it go? Paths to Illustrator. And then that path, you can export it as a path file and open it in Illustrator and laser cut it. And that's what we did here. So what does mine actually look like? This looks like it. I drew a lot of this in black, and then I made these points here, which I need to still work on. And I'm exported to Illustrator for more work. So you can see that, I could use an extra point here. You can sort of nudge this around forever and play with it, but let's just stop here, for example, and say, okay, that's what we want. We have this weird problem, right? This M's going to drop right out, but that's what I did. And you'll see in a moment here that we have a little bit more work to do in Illustrator when we're done, although we can just play with this thing forever. So now I just opened this path in Illustrator, and if you want to see how that's done, all you do is just go File, Open, and in this case, I would hit the path that I saved, which is called this one. I think it's this one here. I want to open that, and it gives me this new thing. You can't see it at first. You have to then highlight it with the selection tool, and then you have to give it a stroke size. So you go to stroke, and then you have to increase the stroke to whatever you want it to be, and then you can see the path here. So, but we have a problem with this path, right? We want to, this M is going to fall out, and we don't want it to fall. We just want the outside parts to fall out. So we are going to make tabs for the laser, because the laser is going to cut this exact path. Now we could go in here, and we probably should go in here and edit this path. We can straighten this out a little bit if we want to. And you can spend your whole life doing this if you like. But we're not going to do that for the sake of this video. I'll just show you some tips. Like, look at this. Like this part, you can see that parts of this Joker's face are going to fall right out completely, and none of this is going to remain masked. So we want to keep some of this, and some of this we don't. So we need to connect it with something we call tabs. So one thing you have to do is, well, at least I find I have to do, is to cut a tab. Now I want to see how unstraight this is. Now obviously we could go through and remove some of these nodes in this path, and we could straighten this out if we wanted to, but we're not going to do that right now. We're just going to go ahead and let it be whatever it is. We're going to use the shape finder tool, the shape builder tool, to create a tab. Now what do we want? There's a little tab right here. You can see where I already made one. Now we want this A to remain because it's shielding the red part in our original image, I think, well, I can't see, it's not there. But there would be an A there. And so we're going to, so in this case, for this particular mask, I need to make some tabs. I don't want this M to fall out. or the middle of these letters down here to fall out. So I'm going to make a tab, for example, on the O's here, right? Well, I'll go up here to the M, it'll be a little more obvious. I'm going to go up here, oops, zoomed in, and I'm going to draw some little tabs. You'll see here, and maybe one down here. Hold this in place, and then I will zoom in even more so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to use the selection tool. This is the direct select tool to select these area, and then I'm going to go select the shape builder tool. I'm holding down Option. I'm going to draw a line right up the middle of this, and you'll see I have a little tab connecting here now. Same with up here. I'm going to zoom in so you can see this a little better. Whoops, I'm going to zoom up. See, I'm going to select all three of these. So I'm going to hit the, I can actually hit either tool. I'll hit the V tool this time. And I'm going to now hit the shape tool, which is Shift M. And I'm going to go Option and drag a line right up the middle here. And I've got a tab. So again, I'm going to go with A or V, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to go Option right up the middle, and oops, I forgot to go Shift M, Option right up the middle, and now I have a tab. So now the M won't fall out, and I want to keep that covered if I want this to be entirely of plastic. I'll show you how I get around that if I'm not using the plastic. And like, for example, here, the middle of this B, I need that to stay, right? Or I want that to be not exposed, so I'm going to make a slim tab. And it's basically the same thing. I'm just going to be making little, little shapes that fit. I'm going to do this here. That make a tab that makes this thing stick here, and I'll connect this to there, and I'll do another one down below. And then I'm going to hit A and select all of this. And you get it. I don't need to over explain this to you, but sometimes more than one example can help. I'm going to go with Shift M. Then I'm going to go to Option, draw a line, Option, draw a, this is going to be a tougher one. Line, Option, draw a, whoops, that's going to be bad news. Oh, because I didn't select this one, I have to go here, Shift M, Option, draw line. Now the middles will stay. This is for the Peroxide mask. I wouldn't be doing this for the other mask, and I'll show you why in another video. I don't have to do this for a different mask. So I'll show you that later, but I will cut this one first. This is for the non-transparent version of the mask, and then I will finish this up, and then you can see what it looks like when I cut it. Here we are cutting the peroxide mask, which has the parts that fall out so we can get the chemical onto the book where we want it. This is what it looks like when we're done cutting. Of course, this one's not a failure because the M fell out, but this is the process. Now we are going to compare it and see where we need to make adjustments, what lines we need to straighten, I'm making little marks here where I need to fix things, and then we go back and make adjustment to the drawing in Illustrator, and we cut it again out of paper before we do the final plastic. Here we're cutting the light mask, and this one is clear acrylic with paper on it that we can use to shield the light where we don't want the light to hit the book, and it looks something like this when we're completed, and we do the same thing of comparing and measuring. Now you'll be able to see what I'm doing here. This is clear, but I want the paper to be removed only where the white light is going to hit the book. So I'm going in here with an awl, and I'm peeling off the parts that where I want the light to hit. And this first one is just a mock-up to see what adjustments I need to make to it, so I'm not going to be that careful. I just want to make sure the whites line up with the whites and that I drew the mask and cut it correctly. So I'm going to go through and peel up the parts where I want the book to see the blue light, which is the white sections of the book. Here's a closer look at what this looks like when I'm doing it. You can see that I just push up in here. I didn't cut this with a very fine laser lens, so the lines are a little coarse. That's okay. It's going to work this over and peel all the parts out where I want the blue light to go, and I'm just giving a little more detail for those who want to see what this process looks like. This part's especially delicate with the Joker's face. It's very difficult to get these sort of fine structures out, so I may need to cut them a little coarser just so the laser can cut it in a way that it can be peeled easily. So I'm learning here, and I'll make a little mark so I can cut it again a little better next time. We line it up and see if it lines up straight, and we make notes where we need to go back and change the mask so we can cut it again. So the whites are lining up okay here, but there are a few spots where we need some improvements. We can see the whites are lining up there, and then below those letters don't look good. So we need to adjust the location of these, and there's a spot where the center of the O didn't come out right, and we have some additional work to do. Overall, this is what the light mask will look like when we're done. It's acrylic. You can see through it, transparent to 99% of the blue light that'll go exposed to it. And this is what the peroxide mask will do. It has holes in it, so it will allow the chemical to go where we want it to. So that's it. That's the first part. I'm going to refine it, make it better, but the rest of it's not really worth watching me do the same thing over and over again until I make the final product. But you get it. And I'm sure I'm helping to get some tips from you people who are good at Illustrator and Photoshop to maybe advise me on how to do this better. As a reminder, there are two masks. The first mask is what I selected it, and I forgot to mention in the video. The peroxide mask is a few pixels smaller than the actual white area, and that's because the peroxide will spread out. And it has the tabs. The tabs are necessary to support things like the center of an O, where we would want to keep that spot in there, but it's okay because the peroxide often will soak under the tab if it's only a couple millimeters wide, and so it doesn't bother us too much. The second mask is a light mask made of acrylic, which I leave the protective film on it, the paper that blocks the light, but you can peel that off, does not have tabs, and you can keep those O's suspended. And if you line that up white, it's actually bigger, it's a little bit wider than the white areas, and that's so that because the light isn't as noticeable and right at the edges, and so I want to overexpose just to make sure the whites are really white. And those are the masks I use. Now, I do predict that there will be some comments from viewers. The typical comments from viewers like in a situation like this might be. They always start with, "I'm an expert. I've been doing this a long time. I'm very good at what I do." They validate themselves first, of course, and then they say, "Well, right, something to the effect of, this is completely unnecessary. There's a much better way to do this." Great, that's fine. Don't do it. I'm not trying to make anyone do it. I'm just sharing something that I do that I've rarely seen having a true effect on, and I've heard a few times people have shared with me that this is something that they've noticed. Where the red color, reds and oranges typically can get bleached out, and and then I just like to keep peroxide off the book in general. I don't have any evidence that peroxide has any kind of bleaching effect on most colors. I just don't like it. And if there is something like water, if you get a book wet, there's something like water damage, it can, as it dries, it can make little marks and pool and stuff. So I just like to minimize exposure if I have to. I'm not saying you have to, but I'm saying that this is something that I like to do. I don't do it always. I do it rarely, but I enjoy it and it's fun. So I hope you enjoyed the video in any case, and I look forward to hearing from you guys online. Take care. Bye-bye.